Insky in the building.
Yeah, I already know. Damn, you got the hair.
It's that mountain life. It's just
For real, you looking like a real mountain man now.
What's up, dude?
What's up? 3E1.
Season 3, E1. Aiden, how do you feel?
Yeah, I can't wait.
Aiden's helping us out today.
Your hair looks a lot better.
Does it?
Yeah.
Or it doesn't look fucked up right now?
No, actually. It looks
Okay.
a lot better.
All right.
Gotta hype up the homies.
Your hair looks so good right now. All right, guys. Jackie's here. Xander.
Thanks for having me. Hey, good seeing you again. That's Patrick, my boyfriend.
Got everything set up. We're gonna set up this last camera and get the podcast going. Let's get into it.
all right, everyone. We are back with another season. This is season 3, episode 1, and we have a very special guest for you today. So when people say that they're going to slap you, usually that's just a warning.
Yes.
Right? For our next guest, it is actually her career, and it is a guarantee. Please welcome Jackie, the hybrid Cataline, to our show.
Thank
you so much for being here.
Thank you for having
we are
me.
Truly honored. So now, for some of you who may not know who she is, why don't you just introduce yourself a little bit, give people a little bit of a breakdown of what you do.
Okay, so my name is Jackie. My nickname is the Hybrid. I am a professional MMA fighter. I will be having my 9th professional fight soon. And then I also compete in power slapping.
Power slap.
Yeah.
That is right. Now, for those who may not know, because it is still somewhat of a new league out there, break down power slap. A lot of people are familiar with MMA, wrestling, all that stuff, but power slap. How did you get into that? What is it? For those who may not know, is it just as obvious as it sounds? Power slap.
It's just as obvious as it sounds. You stand across from each other and you slap the shit out of each other. So, yeah.
That's just it. And I think it was I was watching something, and Dana White said that it's like one of the ultimate tests of toughness to just stand there and take a hit.
Yeah.
I mean, that's got to be something that as an MMA fighter, you're kind of used to.
I was a little hesitant when they first asked me, because for fighting, you can move, you can dodge, you can, roll with the punch. And they told me I just have to stand there and let somebody hit me. So I was like, I don't know about this. I don't know.
Wild.
I'm not sure.
So they actually came to you and asked you to do it versus more of like, I really want to get into this.
Yeah, they actually reached out to me on Instagram.
Oh, really?
And I had never watched any of the clips. Like, I don't have like a ton of social media stuff. Like, I don't scroll on TikTok or like, where you see most of these videos. And so I had never seen it before.
Okay.
And they reached out to me. I didn't respond right away because I just didn't know. And I did some research, and I found out that Dana White actually, in fact, owned it.
Yeah.
And as a professional fighter, everybody's goal is obviously to go to the UFC. So it piqued my interest. Okay, what's this guy doing? So I responded, and they brought me out to Vegas the very next day. I sat down with Frank, who is the president, Erica, who is the matchmaker, and Dana, obviously, who owns it and runs everything.
Wow.
And they're like, we have this girl. Nobody wants to go against her. We need somebody to slap with her. And in my head, I took my boyfriend, my kids, and my parents went with me. In my head, as soon as they were talking, I was like, fuck it, just do it.
Yeah.
What's the worst that can happen, the worst that's going to happen is you get knocked out.
Yeah.
But for me, it was a good business move to get my foot in the door, to stand in front of him, just to do anything.
Yeah.
So my career in power slapping kind of blossomed from there.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's
And you were saying too, that I had a question, because when I interviewed you, I kind of asked you about the key differences between MMA and slap, and you said that slap actually pays better than mixed martial arts. We don't have to go into any like specific figures or anything, but do you think that it's because of just like the hype that's around like the up and coming sport? Is that why they're paying so well, or
yeah, obviously, 100%.
Or is it just because it's dangerous? You're just sitting there like
it's not necessarily that it's dangerous, because fighting is just as dangerous. You could be put to sleep, you could be knocked out, all of those things. But I think because of how quick it's skyrocketed. The sport has only been around for 2 years.
Oh,
wow.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's just exploded.
Right.
And it's very viral because it's it's a 5-second clip you're watching.
Right.
Somebody get knocked out, and it's okay, you know, like most people don't watch the entire match, which
100%.
I highly recommend going to a live event if you ever can, because it's super fun. But yeah, you could just watch that 5-second clip, see a freaking crazy knockout, and you know, so it's and it's Dana White. He's an amazing business person, and he knows what the hell he's doing.
Exactly.
So
Absolutely.
anything that he touches clearly turns to gold. So
yeah.
I actually have a question about that. So you said MMA is just as dangerous as slap boxing, right?
oh yeah.
Yeah, and I noticed that a lot of people specifically critique slap boxing just because of the potential of CTE. What would you say to those people that criticize it just because of, they say it's more dangerous just because you're constantly taking hits to the face?
Honestly, you get, for me, because I do both, I get punched and kicked and hit more in a fight than I do taking 3 slaps from somebody.
That's true.
So for me, it's like it could happen in either. And if it's going to happen, I sign a contract and I know that that's what I'm stepping up there to do. And it is a possibility.
Yeah.
Granted, we don't want it to happen. And luckily, there hasn't been any serious injuries, any serious where somebody's had to retire or they just couldn't compete anymore. And obviously, that's a risk that we take. But it could happen in anything. It could happen in football. It could happen in hockey. It could happen in wrestling. It happens in any kind of combat sport.
Any
it can
combat
happen.
contact sport.
It's just, this is something new, and yes, you really have to have balls to stand up there and just let somebody slap you.
Yes, for sure.
So everybody just thinks it's more brutal because you're taking the slap, but in reality, every sport there's a risk for CTE.
Yeah.
And you're no stranger to the combat sports because you've been doing combat sports ever since you can really remember,
Since I
guess,
could walk,
you know. And your family is involved as well. Brother does combat sports too. So kind of break down a little bit. Let's walk back just a little bit as far as like your history within combat sports, because I think there's a lot of people out there that on our side of the television screen, when we see these amazing matches, we're like, man, how do they get there? What does it take? Like, I wonder what kind of training they did. It's a lot more than I'm sure just standing there and getting slapped. So talk about your history. Your wrestling, you wrestled on the national level, correct?
I did.
Okay, break that down and kind of walk us through that timeline.
I'm going to take it all the way back to I was 12. So I have 5 brothers. And my mom and dad. 5 brothers, yeah. There's 8 kids in my family. 5 brothers and 2 sisters. But all 5 of my brothers wrestled. Both my mom and my dad coached high school wrestling. So I started competing in wrestling when I was 12 years old, 76 pounds. Like, my parents would take me to freestyle tournaments, and
that's sick.
I'm going to be 37 this year. So was no girls. So I was literally the only girl at 99% of tournaments.
Wow.
So it was not like, it was a very rare thing to see a girl wrestling at that time. And even rarer that I was beating the boys. So obviously my parents were like, okay, she's going to be good at wrestling. So I continued to wrestle. I got into high school. You know, I was a very successful high school wrestler. I was beating boys, making them quit, you know, all of that. So my parents...
It's the great equalizer. Jiu-jitsu, it's like the great equalizer.
I've seen some girls just tear up a tournament before. You do
100%.
Not underestimate it, man. No. So my parents took me and my younger brother, who was the fighter also, to a freestyle tournament, which is a little bit different than high school wrestling. Yeah, folk style.
And we get to the tournament, and me and my brother are about the same size, so we're like, okay, you're going to go this weight, I'm going to go this weight, so we don't have to wrestle each other in the tournament. Because I'd only ever wrestled boys. And we get to the tournament, and they're like, no, we have a girls division. And I'm like, what? There's girls wrestling? I had no idea that there was like more girls that wrestled. And so they put me in against high school girls. I smashed all of the girls in high school. So Terry Steiner, who is the national wrestling coach, the Olympic wrestling coach for women, he was there recruiting high school girls and college girls. He approached my parents and he's like, who is this girl? Where have you been hiding her? How come I don't know who she is? Because he knew everybody that was anybody in women's wrestling.
But you've been wrestling the boys for
I had been wrestling boys, and I was training in my parents' garage. So, like, my name wasn't out there.
Got you.
And so he talked to my parents, and he's like, hey, I want her to wrestle the college level tomorrow.
Oh,
I kind of want to see how she does. I was 17 at the time. I want to see how she does. Like, don't expect her to win any matches, but, you know, I just want to gauge where she's at.
Right.
And I wound up winning the next day also. So
against college?
Against the college girls.
Dang.
I made it to the finals, and I wrestled the girl. It would have been her 4th time winning that national championship tournament.
Would have been.
It would have been. And I beat her. Yeah, I beat her in the finals. So he actually recruited me to move to Colorado Springs, live and train at the Olympic Training Center while I was still in high school. Dang. So that's kind of how my freestyle career started.
Okay.
My parents took us to the tournament. He saw me. I moved to Colorado Springs, finished high school there, started training, and from then on, you know, I was on the national team.
Yeah.
So.
And you never wrestled like any Grecos? It was like folk style straight to freestyle?
Yeah, it was folk style. I did high school and then straight to freestyle. They actually, Greco for women is very new. They don't really have it in a lot of tournaments yet.
Okay.
So mainly from high school, girls that go to college and wrestle in college, it's freestyle.
Interesting.
So they don't have,
right here,
yeah,
so
they don't have
yeah.
like collegiate for women. It's freestyle.
Oh, okay.
Like the
Yeah.
men, D1 wrestling,
Yeah.
it's collegiate. There's riding time. There's all these different
Yes,
things.
yes.
They don't have it for women.
Yeah, me and him wrestled in high school, and I still watch college wrestling to this day. So yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, that's crazy. But like kind of segueing from wrestling to MMA, what was like the hardest transition from? Was it an easy transition? Because I know like wrestlers. We know it's 120%. It's like learning to fight when you're exhausted. It's like getting to that point to go to OT, triple OT, sudden death, and be able to pull it off.
Yeah.
So like going to MMA from wrestling, was the conditioning kind of similar? Was it a little bit easier because you can kind of get some distance and kind of take some more breaths? Like what was that like?
Honestly, the transition for me was fairly easy. The hardest part for me, obviously, was the stand-up, the boxing. Like, I never boxed. I never, like, did any... I'm not throwing punches in a wrestling match. You know? Like,
striking.
So for me, the striking is the thing that I have to work on the most because wrestling just comes second nature.
Yes.
So definitely transitioning into fighting was pretty easy just because how good I was at wrestling.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you this then. So when you were doing your transitioning, you're into the MMA sport more, and you're doing your striking, you're getting better. Talk about like the first time that like you actually got a taste of what a real hit is like, and that switch that goes, oh, okay, I can take that. This, you know what I mean? Like, did that happen for you, or was it just you kind of just were just progressing as you were going through MMA and not even really realizing, you know, the hits or how powerful it is? Because
honestly, I haven't been hit hard until this last power slap.
Oh, really?
To be honest, like
Gotcha.
in any of my MMA fights, and I have my 9th professional fight coming up, I have not really been rocked. I haven't been dropped. I haven't like felt like good power.
Gotcha.
So when I was hit in power slap with that shot, and obviously I wasn't defending myself, so you know, she hit me right on the button, and she wound up dropping me. But my body kind of just naturally took over, and I recovered, and I stood up, and for me, just being able to go back and watch that on camera, like, okay, I can take a hit like that and still, even though I don't remember any of it, like, I still can get up and recover. And so honestly, for a fight, I don't feel like any of these girls at the weight that I'm gonna fight are strong enough to knock me out.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Especially when you're defending yourself, right?
Yeah.
You're not just sitting there like with your chin
Right.
out. Like,
And for me too, because I have such a good wrestling base, like if I feel uncomfortable on my feet, like you're beating me on the feet, I'm just gonna take you down.
Yeah.
Like we're
And
just gonna
that's
go down to the ground.
That's a whole nother world too. It's like you see a bunch of people who are boxers, and even in street fights, and then someone knows jujitsu, takes them down. It's like they don't even know what to do.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, how do I, you know, like.
Yeah.
So yeah, the ground game is a completely
It
different.
is.
But when you know both, you're a force to be reckoned with for sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
And it kind of sounded like you were calling out your weight class. Is there anybody you kind of want to?
So recently,
fight
I mean, all of my fights have been heavier, 155 or 145. I just recently decided that I'm actually going to go down to 135.
Okay.
Okay.
For power slapping and for fighting, just because the UFC doesn't have a 145-pound weight division.
Mm-hmm.
So it doesn't make sense for me to continue to compete at a division that I'm not going to be able to step into when I transition.
Yeah.
So, I mean, and honestly, 135 pounds, I'm going to be so much bigger and so much stronger than people.
Yeah.
I don't feel like there's really anybody in the UFC at that weight that is going to be able to hang with my wrestling.
Yeah, because like, what do you walk around at like
I walk around about 150.
150, yeah. So like when in my senior year, I walked around at like 150, 155, and I wrestled 132.
Yeah.
And just like, cutting weight with sauna suits and running, 6 miles a day, going to wrestling practice, eating a little bit. So like, just for people who don't even know, like for this sport, there's so much that goes into it before you even step out.
Yeah.
Right. So like, do you want to talk about was the cutting weight just kind of like you said, like second nature, just like wrestling? Like when you're in MMA, you're like, oh yeah, I've done this. I've cut weight, a bunch of times. This is easy. A lot of people have problems with it. It's normal to me.
Honestly, I cut weight my entire wrestling career. I always, went down to the lower weight. So when I decided to fight, I was like, I don't want to keep cutting weight. I've already been doing it for 21 years. Like I don't want to cut.
Done.
I want to be able to eat whatever I want. I don't want to have to worry about cutting. I want to go to the event and be sitting there eating while my opponent is out running around.
With the sauna suit.
So that's why I've competed at 145 pounds, because 5 pounds, I walk around 150 to get down to 146 technically is nothing. I could lose that overnight. So I've kind of enjoyed that because I don't have to drain myself or cut or do anything crazy. But I know going down to 135, I'm going to have to start, a little bit earlier and,
but it's doable.
Cut all the cookies out of my diet.
Yes,
and,
unfortunately.
all of the things. But it's doable.
Yeah.
A lot of girls cut from a lot higher to a lot lower.
Yes,
But I'm a little bit older and I don't need to be killing my body like that.
Yeah.
But 135 pounds is the weight class for the UFC for me.
That's awesome.
And since you've been cutting weight so long, I just remember in high school, everybody cut weight so like very unhealthily. You know what I mean?
100%.
Have you figured out a way, like, you can give someone some advice out there, a healthier way to cut, or is
a lot of wrestlers cut out their water?
Yeah.
Because okay, I gotta sweat, I gotta lose the weight, I gotta not drink any water, put the weight back on. But in reality, you kind of want to load the water until like your final cut, maybe 24 or 48 hours before, because the more hydrated that you are, the more you're gonna sweat. So and when you're in high school, you don't understand that, and you also still want to eat like shit and, like eat hot Cheetos and burritos and whatever it is these high school kids eat. And then
that was Xander's lunch today.
I'm still eating that too this day.
So definitely a good tip is to load the water until the very end.
And then for like as far as weigh-ins for MMA, is it like same day that morning, but you have like 12 hours, or is it a day before?
It's usually like 32 to 36 hours before.
Okay, so you basically,
so the whole day before. It's usually the morning before, and then you compete the following day in the evening. So you have like a day and a half.
Yeah, to kind of recover, get your fluids back up. That's cool. Okay, that's cool. That's totally doable. And I'm definitely stoked to see you in your bout for sure.
I know that'll be cool. And do you have like a go-to meal after weigh-ins? Is it like, I'm getting Korean barbecue?
Honestly, it depends on where we're at. Like I've competed all over. We were in Saudi Arabia. I've competed in every state, all these countries. So it just depends. And honestly, I don't like to overdo it because then I feel like shit the next day. Yeah. So I usually stay pretty healthy, like protein and salads and just
good steak,
lots of fluid.
Yeah. Okay.
There is one thing that I do because when I start cutting the water out, like you lose the salt.
Yeah.
So I do drink pickle juice before I start hydrating.
Ooh, okay.
Because if I start hydrating, like just drinking water, Gatorade, whatever, like it's just going to go through you because there's no salt.
Yeah.
So I drink the pickle juice first, and then that way all the fluids stick.
Yeah.
We had a coach that used to say that in soccer. He'd be like, drink some pickle juice before the game or at nighttime.
And it helps with cramping too.
Yeah.
That's what he said. He's like, avoid the cramping. I didn't, and I cramped.
Yeah.
But it's like, oh man, don't know about this pickle juice.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's a tip right there.
It is.
Yeah.
So as far as the MMA world is concerned, going from the wrestling to the MMA, like what is that like getting whoever it is that calls you, walking up into the office, getting that pen, putting your name to ink and on paper, like what's that feeling like? I mean, is it like accomplishment? Is it just like an out-of-body experience? Like a lot of people, I'm sure, kind of want to know, like, what is that like to know that I'm taking my fighting from a passion to profession?
Honestly, I never really thought about it like that because it's just like, it's something that I like to do, and I don't really think about like how cool it really is, like for the stuff that I'm doing, just because it's like, it's just my life, like I fight and I power
It's a
slap
cool ass life, yo.
Yeah.
You're traveling around Saudi Arabia. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
It's
but
Korean
and it's
barbecue.
funny because every time I do a podcast and somebody like mentions it or like, then it makes me think like, oh God, not everybody gets to do this, you know? Like I have to take a step back and realize like, oh, you're pretty lucky, you're good at sports, but it's taken you to be able to do all of these things, so it's definitely a cool life to live.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I just have to ask, like, what has been your most memorable match? Like, it could be slap boxing, it could be a wrestling match from high school or MMA. Like, what has been the most memorable or your favorite?
I have two, obviously. My first one is a wrestling match in high school. I was in the league championships. Obviously, I wrestled boys. I made it to the finals. And I was wrestling a boy that had beat me earlier in the year. He beat me 9-3, and it was like our rival high school.
Okay.
He was a senior, the captain of their team. I was a sophomore at the time, and so we start the match, and I get the first takedown. There's no score in the first period. I get the first takedown, and then he escapes. So he chooses bottom. He escapes. He gets 1 point. I wind up getting a takedown in that period, so it's 2-1.
Nice.
His coach complains that my laces weren't taped, and they give him a point. So now it's tied 2-2.
What?
Yeah.
That's so cheap.
So it's tied 2-2, and we go into the third period. We're standing. We start neutral, and the match is almost over. And I'm like, fuck, I gotta take him down. And I literally shoot with like 5 seconds left on the clock, and I take him down out of bounds, but
2 feet in?
but my toes are in.
Oh!
But my toes are in. The ref calls the 2, and I beat him 4-2 for the league championship.
Dude, I bet that felt so good.
So it was good. It was like all in I went to high school in Long Beach at the time, and it was in the press telegram, and there was a picture of me cheering. He's like laying on the ground, and I'm like cheering over him.
That's so sick.
No,
that's how you know when someone knows how to wrestle is when you take him out and you're able to think about getting him out, but also, hey, keep your feet in, let's get this. That's how you're composed under that amount of pressure is just awesome.
And do you ever think there's probably a woman out there that saw you on that newspaper and was like, oh, I want to do that now too?
I'm sure. I mean, I know that I'm a pioneer for women's wrestling because at the time there was very few of us, and now it's one of the fastest growing sports. I coach high school wrestling now.
Oh,
okay, sweet.
So I coach a boy and a girls team, and I mean, our girls team this year won CIF, and it's growing massively.
Yeah.
And girls are getting full ride scholarships, and
That's
so
cool.
I wish it was like that when I was a kid, but it's also people watched me then and as they were littler kids and oh, that's something that I want to do. So that's a cool aspect.
You
of
may
it
have
too.
been a solid piece of the catalyst to make all this happen, which is just
100%.
awesome. That should make you feel like great, right?
Yeah, it does.
I know that's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
Well, so what was that second one?
So the second one is me knocking out Sheena in power slap.
All right. Now, for those who may not know, Sheena Bathory, right?
Yes.
Okay, so there's some history. There's some rivalry. Can you break that down just a little bit and kind of go about a little bit of the history, because it's a little deep, but so however you want to break it down.
So there wasn't any. I took that match on 2 weeks' notice.
Okay, the first one.
The very first one, the one where I knocked her out.
Yeah.
There was no beef. I met her. We were in Vegas. We went on Fox News together. We did all these
That's
media
awesome.
things together, and And I know she was super nice.
Yeah.
And I know she was being nice because she thought that they were bringing me in to lose, and she had it in the bag.
Right.
And then obviously we go up, we compete. I won the coin toss, which means I get to slap first.
Right.
And I knock her out in the first slap.
Yeah.
Oh, dang.
I don't see her after
Yeah.
because if you get knocked out, they take you to the hospital.
Right.
Whether you think that you need to go or not, they take you.
Sure.
That's good.
Yeah.
So I didn't see her, but I did reach out to her the next day just to check on her and be like,
Yeah.
hey, are you okay? And
Yeah.
she was a total bitch.
Oh.
She just like complete change of the way
Wow.
that she was when she thought she was going to win.
Right.
So then it kind of just started a little beef, and they're talking shit online, and it kind of just escalated.
Sure.
Yeah.
And then she didn't compete for an entire year.
Wow.
So I never got my rematch
Right.
until like 2 months ago.
Right.
You know what I
Okay.
mean? So
Yeah.
it took a while. So I went against her, and then I had 2 matches in between until I got the rematch.
Right.
Okay.
So I competed 4 times in power slap in 12 months.
Wow.
Dang. And she had a full year of recovery, pretty much.
Yeah, so she had a full year. She said she needed the time, and okay, great, but she was supposed to compete against me in Saudi Arabia, and they told me that she was injured in training, and I guess her fake boob popped, so she had to have surgery.
Gotcha.
And then, so I had to wait again. That was supposed to be in October. So then it wound up being in January. And the first time we competed was the February before.
Oh,
So
wow.
almost
Wow.
Okay,
almost
yeah.
to the day an entire year.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then obviously she won a decision. The first slap, she slapped first. Obviously they weren't going to let me slap first again.
So there was no coin toss at
No,
all?
there is a coin toss. There's always a coin toss, but they don't do the coin toss in front of us. So we don't know how accurate it is, if they just pick or choose, or like they actually do a coin toss.
I did not
I have
know
no
that.
idea.
Yeah, I did not know that. I thought
Yeah.
they make it visual so everyone can see.
Yeah.
No,
Wow.
they
Okay.
don't.
And quick question, was she the person that like Slapbox initially hit you up for like nobody wants to fight this person?
Yes.
Okay,
That
so
was
she-
her.
That was her, and then I
Okay.
knocked her out, and then she was out for a year.
Okay.
So they were trying to build it around her. She was the,
Mm-hmm.
I would say, the face of women's power slap.
I mean,
Okay.
she looked pretty confident and happy with herself the very first one. I mean, it almost seemed like she was like her just grin like right before you knocked her out.
Yeah.
It almost seemed like it was like a taunt. I don't know like what she was thinking, but she was like that, and I was like, what is this girl doing? Like you're about ready to take a slap, and that was one for the books that you gave.
It was
her.
probably one of the most gnarly slaps in the girls division for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. A lot of girls don't have that kind of knockout power.
right.
So you just see it goes back and forth, It's not like as entertaining as like say the heavyweights, because there's going to be a knockout.
Yeah.
So
But the sound,
Yeah.
I mean, it was.
I mean,
just
if we can put in a clip
epic.
right
Yeah,
here,
I'm
we
sure
should
we're
just
gonna have
put
to-
in a clip
put
right
in
here.
there.
And then
For sure.
just go
It is-
back.
It is.
Oh, there it is. Shit, to make this out. It's done. Eat on that shit. That gave a little burst of energy to the room, I'll tell you.
What to expect. It was her slap debut. She'd never done this before, and she steps up to that table and delivers the most devastating knockout of the night.
Incredible. But as far as the mental game with that, I mean, we can talk about the training and all that. You're no stranger to combat sports training.
Right.
I know Dana puts these power slap competitors through training as well, and they run the analytics and stuff. But let's talk about the mental game for a little bit. What is it like to train yourself to say, I'm going to stand here and take a hit?
honestly, I never really thought about it. I just go up there and do it.
Yeah, is it like
I don't
easier?
think about it. I don't know.
Yeah,
Because most people, I'm sure, it's like you see that, you're like, I would never want to go anywhere near something like that.
Yeah.
But if you're signing up and you're just like, no, not only am I signing up, but I'm going to take on the person that no one wants to take on, and I'm going to slap the shit out of her. Like, how does that happen, though? To me, that just seems like there's got to be some mental trigger that's just like,
You have to be a little bit crazy, I think.
Just a little.
It's a little crazy.
Gotcha.
I mean, to be honest, like, just to get up there and just know that somebody is just gonna smack you as hard as they can.
Yeah.
yeah, you're just gonna take a hit. Yeah.
Yeah.
Is it like easy to like? Is it like easy for you to be like, okay, yeah, like I can't defend this at all. I'm just gonna go up there, Hopefully I don't get knocked down. We'll just see what happens. Like
I feel like I have kind of like a switch when I know that I'm gonna go compete. Like if I step in the cage, it's like a totally different person. You know what I mean?
Gotcha.
So I feel like once I step on that stage, like I don't even think about it all. I just like I'm getting up there to do my job, and I stand up there, and you know on what count they're going. We have to tell the referee like, hey, I'm going with my left on 1 or 2 or 3, and so I know when the slap is coming.
Right.
So it's not like you can just surprise me.
Yeah.
So
Anticipating
for
it.
me, and some people do this and some people don't like to do it. I will close my eyes when you come back, and I know you're gonna come for the swing. I'll close my eyes, bite down on my mouthpiece. That way, I know for a fact I'm not flinching. Because if you flinch,
they
get to slap you again.
Oh, actually, I didn't
in the
know that
same
part.
round. Yeah,
and
I don't want to be
that-
slapped twice in the same round.
Yeah, so there's definitely some rules. So if you want to break some of those down too, because it's not just stand up there and just take a swing.
Slap each other back and forth.
There's some rules, like you said. You have to let the referee know how many, like, I guess swings you're gonna take, like practice swings.
Yeah.
And then on that number, you have to do it.
Right.
If you get knocked down, what is it? 30 seconds?
No, it's like boxing.
Like, okay,
so you have
so
a 10 count.
Okay, it's a 10 count.
So usually on 8 you want to be standing back
Sure.
up, because they're gonna ask you to walk to them, and as long as you walk straight and you're not,
Yeah.
walking sideways, they'll let you continue. And then after that 10 count, you have another 60 seconds to go to your corner, chalk up, recover, and then step back to the podium.
Okay.
Got you.
Yeah.
And then both feet planted, right?
So they changed the rule after my slap event.
Because that was another thing, right? Yeah.
So there was a no heel, no pivot, no nothing rule. You had to keep your feet completely planted and flat. They changed the rule to where now after the hit, we can have a natural heel lift. So like the back of our heel, if it lifts slightly, they're not calling that.
Okay.
So it's just like with the motion,
that
it's
seems so
hard
natural.
to keep them down. So it's natural movement after the slap is okay.
Okay.
Okay, yeah. So after contact, the natural movement out. Okay, that's good.
I can completely move. I slap you, and I can completely move anywhere that I want. My feet can move. Everything can move.
Well, there's something else that sounded so damn harsh, especially in your sport. And one of it was, I think the rule was called clubbing.
Clubbing, yeah.
Oh, clubbing.
Yeah, and we're not talking about Ice Cube in the club, bro. We're talking like some actual striking there. And so what is that? We're getting hit with the side of your hand?
So clubbing is a couple different things. So for the person slapping, you cannot lead with the palm.
Okay.
All 3 points of your hand have to hit at the same time.
Okay.
So if I lead like this, that's a club.
Okay.
Got you.
Now, if I hit too low on the neck, too high on the temple, or too deep into the ear, where my palm is, because they want it here. You want it to land here with your palm kind of off of the chin.
Okay.
So if I'm too deep and I'm like, my palm's on your cheek, that's a club.
Okay.
So too high, low, deep, or with the butt of your hand, it's all a club.
So they want you to hit them right on the butt end.
You literally have to hit them in the right spot with the right part of your hand every time.
But when it connects like that first fight, oh my God.
And honestly, it's really hard to do because you're trying to swing with everything you got.
Sure.
And you just like, where is this going to land? I don't know.
Yeah. You're just hoping for the best.
Yeah. I'm actually curious.
No, go for it.
I'm actually curious. So we talked about the mental training.
Yeah.
What does the physical training look like? Because obviously, what we see, you just go up there and you slap.
You're just on the cable machine, just like
yeah.
I mean, there is everybody does something differently training wise. For me, because I do MMA, like I don't really implement a lot of new things into slapping. I do have a bob, which is like the upper half of a torso and a head that I just practice for the accuracy. So I practice my swing on my bob, but you can only slap so many times before your hand starts hurting. So it's like, how much can you really practice? But yeah, just an accuracy thing. And then I do have like little bites they're like hard rubber that I put in my mouth, and like I bite down, and it like strengthens this muscle in my jaw.
I've seen
so that way when I bite
those.
down on my mouthpiece, like that muscle protrudes and kind of protects that knockout spot. So everybody does different stuff, but for me it's like I'm not trying to be this power slapping guru. I'm just using it as a stepping stone to get into the UFC.
Okay.
So there are people that take the training extremely serious that are in the gym focusing on just that.
Yeah.
but obviously I have different goals than just getting a belt in power slap.
Okay.
So what's the end goal then?
The end goal is to get a belt in the UFC.
There you go.
And get a belt in power slap.
I love it.
So like Jackie the hybrid Cataline.
Yes.
Where did that name come from?
So my nickname actually came from my boyfriend.
Okay.
We were having a conversation about it, like nicknames and like, do I really need a nickname? Like I've been competing and wrestling for so long, everybody knows my name. I don't need a nickname. And so the conversation just went on, and he's like, well, you're kind of like a hybrid, you know, you're good at wrestling, you're good at this, you're good at that. And as soon as he said it, I was like, that's the nickname.
Yeah.
That's it. And you just figured it out.
Yeah.
So like that's kind of how it came about.
Okay.
Now, when you go places, do they ask like how you want to be announced and stuff like that? And then you just, I'm Jackie the hybrid. Like, do you like write it down somewhere? Or it's just like,
for the most part, they give you like for fights, anyways. They give you a sheet like, what city do you want to be announced out of? Like, you know, all of these things. And because I've been doing it for a little while now, they all know.
Okay.
So they all know like how I want my name done. And actually, the announcer for Invicta, which is the promotion that I fought for my last fight, and then this fight coming up is going to be for. It's an all women's promotion. He's actually close friends with us. And he always like makes sure that he like makes it, you know, the announcing part better, you know. So he's like, okay, I'm gonna say you're from Long Beach, but you're fighting out of Eastvale, and you know, like so he makes it cool and it's fun. But yeah, they already know my name and how I want to be announced.
Okay. And like the like stepping into the octagon, right? Because everyone's like tradition, I feel like, is different. Like you see some MMA fighters, you know, kind of put their hands together, kind of bow their head, and then just mentally, like, right when they step through, it's like you said, the switch.
Yeah.
So, like, the crowd and everyone like that, when everyone's, like, cheering or, you know, doing what they do you, like, completely block that out? Are you just, like, seriously honed in on this person, like, nothing else matters?
Yeah.
Like, because you hear all these corner coaches, like, hey, do this, do it. Sometimes do you just not even, like, hear them? Are you just so locked in? Or?
As soon as I start walking, like, there's usually, like, a catwalk. We walk out, they announce us, you know, you go, you get your grease on your eyes, all that stuff. As soon as I start walking out, I don't hear any of the crowd. It's like a weird skill to like just tune everybody out. But for me, mainly because my dad coached me in wrestling and he has a really loud voice. So I was able to tune everybody out except for him.
That's awesome.
And I could just hear him. So now I've been able to like, with all of my coaches, usually my boyfriend's in my corner or my head coach Romy from Millennia, I'm able to zone everything out except their voice. So I am able to hear what they're trying to coach me in the corner. But it definitely takes skill to do.
Yeah. And your dad's always in your corner with everyone?
So usually, for my fighting, he's been in my corner a couple of times. But he's retired now. He was in law enforcement. So
my dad too. He just retired.
He's doing a lot of like, you know, they bought a house in Tennessee. So
we just bought a house in Texas.
He's living his retired life. So I don't like, you know, ask him to go to everything because I am pretty active. I like to stay active. Last year I competed 7 times.
Oh,
wow.
Between power slapping and fighting.
In 1 year.
That's an active year
for
sure. That's crazy.
Jeez.
And I do have another question. So this is kind of taken back to your high school career. So since you were obviously the only girl that most of these guys have ever seen, I'm assuming most guys, when they would come up, like, they see you, easy match, you know, if you lose to this, bro, like, you know, would you ever see, like, would you ever see their faces when you beat them? And like their whole team, and like they're just like in awe, like what the fuck just happened?
So I did, like, when I first started wrestling, it was like you said, like, oh, it's just a girl, you know, I got it. And then I started winning a lot. And people knew who I was just because, oh, that's the girl that wrestles at Milliken. Even if they didn't know my name, they knew, like, I always wore crazy socks.
Oh, okay.
So, like, everybody knew, you know.
That's awesome.
But once I started, like, winning, and I had several boys completely quit wrestling.
Really?
There was one kid from Redlands High School that I actually beat like 3 or 4 different times, and I never saw him again. Like, he just never came back to wrestling.
One spladle and he just dipped.
Yeah. And there was
he
one
works for the
kid,
Peace Corps now. He's a pacifist.
Yeah. There was one kid, like, I wound up like getting behind his back and I picked him up and I like blocked his knee and like tilted him down. Matt returned him and he posted his arm.
Ooh.
And his elbow popped out of the skin. And I wanted to quit because I was like, oh, this is gross.
Yeah.
My dad's like, no.
That's what literally happened to our teammate as well. Picked up, he's getting mat returned, and he tried to post behind him. Literally compound fracture out of the skin and everything.
Yeah.
That's like the most cringiest,
It's gross.
Like, it's just
Injury,
like, it's just, it happens too, you know?
Yeah, definitely.
People don't know how to get mat returned.
Right.
Don't post.
Don't let somebody get behind you.
No, exactly. Yeah, that's the first defense. Yeah.
So was it just like super satisfying, like those first couple years when you were still you still weren't known yet, and then you'd see their faces? You're like,
Honestly, it didn't even take that long.
oh really?
Yeah, because the fact that I was the only girl in Southern California wrestling on a high school boys wrestling team, as soon as the news found out, this one particular guy from the Press Telegram, which is the newspaper in Long Beach, he came to every tournament.
Oh really?
He came to every tournament, took pictures, did a newspaper article every time that I won a tournament. Like, so everybody already kind of knew. So it was like, it was hard to kind of stay under the radar, you know?
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I had lots of boys quit, cry. Some kids' moms told them, you can't wrestle that girl. Like,
Dang.
lots of things.
Any
you know?
teammates at all, or how was that like wrestling with your teammates? Would you just beat the shit out of them, or would they like?
We had a really good team, actually.
Okay.
So we were back-to-back CIF champions my freshman and sophomore year.
And what high school did you go to again?
I went to Milliken High School in Long Beach.
Okay.
So everybody was a stud. So the room was just good.
Iron
you
sharpens
know?
iron type of thing.
So it was like, and I had 2 older brothers on the team at the time. My dad
sweet.
coached.
Oh.
So it was like,
Yeah.
you know, everybody knew who I was, and
Yeah.
you know, my brothers were really good, and so yeah, it was
What was
definitely
it like
a
as
cool
kids
experience.
growing up in a house full of wrestlers? Was like everything just broken? Like just, you know, like just stuff
Vases,
everywhere,
the
vases.
The good thing
like-
about my parents is my dad always made our garage a wrestling room. So even when we weren't at the high school, if we had problems with each other, we were in the garage beating the shit out of each other.
And so, like, was it? I guess in like a fighting house like that, it can either go one of two ways. Either there's consistent wrestling, or everyone's just minding their P's and Q's because, you know, at a moment like, oh, it's about to go down.
Yeah.
Like, I may be the younger one and I'm the sister, but you know I'll take you down. Like,
Yeah.
what was that kind of like? Was it nice knowing that, you know, I got brothers that are here to protect me but also teach me fighting? Or is it nice knowing that, yeah, if I need to go toe-to-toe with them, I can also do that too? Like,
I mean, a little bit of both, obviously. I have 2 older brothers and 3 younger brothers. So it was a very competitive household. I mean, even when it wasn't wrestling, like, we're playing marbles. Like, we're trying to, like, be the best, you know? So that's just kind of how we were raised. Both my mom and my dad were super alpha personalities, so that's kind of how we all just grew up and are as adults.
yeah.
So yeah, everything was a competition.
Wow. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Now, as well as like the whole fighting is you know, in the family, they, you know, you guys are all wrestlers and you have that combat sport history.
Yeah.
Talk about also some of like the, like witnessing some of the fighting, like wrestling on TV or MMA fighters. Like, who are some of the people you looked up to? Who are some of the people your brothers and your father looked up to? Whether that was like, you know, wrestling in WWE or wrestling in ECW or something like that, or MMA fighters. Who are the people that really like you looked up to, other than your family, that were out there? You know,
So I
doing their
never
thing?
really watched fighting when I was younger, like UFC type of fighting. My dad always had WWF at the time.
At the time,
on
yeah.
TV, like every night of the week, he was watching that stuff.
Yeah.
I wasn't that into it, but all my brothers loved it, watched it. But for me, like growing up, there was 2, one guy and one girl that I watched their career wrestling. So the first is Rulon Gardner, who is an Olympic champion. He won the Olympics in 2000, had beaten Alexander Karelin, who had not been scored on in 12 years.
Oh,
Wow.
dang.
He beat
Hasn't
him
been
in the
scored on?
not even a point.
Wow. Okay.
And he beat him in the finals for the Olympics. Won the Olympic gold medal.
Gosh.
He has his own book. He's done all of these things. So that was like my idol for wrestling. And then also, when I was in high school, I watched the very first women's Olympics. I was awake at 2:00 in the morning, like waking my
Yeah.
parents up, like, "Hey, wrestling's on!
Yeah.
We're turning the TV on." And Sarah McMahon, who actually fought in the UFC and Bellator, was wrestling. So she's obviously older than me, and she was the very first woman to earn a medal in the Olympics for wrestling.
That's bitchin'.
Yeah, so she wound up taking silver and was the very first Olympic medal for women's wrestling.
That's awesome. Have you one of the I love Daniel Cormier. Like I used to see him at OSU wrestling his or I watch him right. And it's I don't know. It's just like bringing it back. Like every wrestler that has like collegiate or national experience, it just seems like they're just such natural fighters. Like the grit and just the consistency. But Dan Gable said, once you've wrestled,
life is
easy. Would you agree with that statement?
100%. Wrestling is one of the hardest sports to get into, to stick with, to continue to do. Most kids that do it we have 150 kids on our wrestling roster.
That's crazy.
We have kids that cycle in and out, and we make the practices hard as hell because we don't want the kids that are just gonna quit. If that's your personality, we don't want you on our team.
You wean them out pretty quick.
Yeah, we try and wean those ones out. So I feel like most rooms are that way, just because they know it's a hard sport. It takes a lot of time and energy, and even as much as it is about the wrestling, you have to have super supportive parents because you're traveling all over. You're going to these tournaments every weekend. Friday, Saturday, you're gone all day. Your parents are sitting in bleachers watching. So it's definitely a.
It's an all year round sport too. It's when people aren't wrestling in off season and they're better than you. That's when you're That's when you're catching up to them. At least that's what our mindset was. It was all year round, going to tournaments all year round.
Yeah, we tell our kids that wrestle in high school you become a better wrestler in the off season. Yeah. You did this during high school, okay. You take the summer off and you're not practicing, and that one kid is. Yeah. Look how much better he is gonna be than you, just because you took those 3 or 4 months off. You know. So we definitely we keep our program open all year round.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Awesome. Yeah.
Now, you said that you were doing the coaching for your high school. It seems like it's a pretty big roster. Was that something that you kind of walked into? Was that something that you really kind of at the ground floor built up this team to the roster that it is now? What was that journey like?
So my parents actually coached the program from the time the school opened.
That's awesome.
Okay.
So, wow. It's Roosevelt High School in Eastville. It's been open about 18 years now.
Oh, okay.
So it's a newer school.
Yeah.
So when my brother that also fought was in high school, I had just graduated. He was going into his junior year. They opened the new high school, and that's where my parents live. So I had already graduated high school, so I wasn't able to go there. So when my brothers started going there, my 3 younger brothers, there was no any kind of programs because it was brand new. They had no wrestling program, no coach, no nothing. So my dad's I'll coach the wrestling team. Yeah. He was a cop. He was a walk-on coach, so he didn't have to teach at the school. He just was there for practice.
Nice.
Wow. So they ran the program for 17 years and built that program to what it is. 3 years ago, me and my brother took over the program.
Okay.
That's awesome. So yes, we walked into a very good program, but it was coached the way that we were coached.
Yes. Yeah.
Because my parents coached both of us.
Right.
And ran that program the way that they coached us, and so it's kind of just passed down. So.
Yeah. What a legacy
that's awesome.
that they left for you guys. That's
incredible. Have you guys ever went against Temecula?
Yes.
And how did you guys do it? Because we beat everyone in our league, besides Temecula. Whatever the hell they do, they breed them different.
So we beat them.
You did.
That's very satisfying.
Because they have, they have CIF champs every year. They've won our division for the last 33 years, 34 years. Yeah. They're just kind of
that's us. We're in the Big 8 league.
Okay.
So there's 8 schools in our league.
Okay.
We usually are the league champions.
Okay.
Not this year, because we lost a lot of seniors. But the 2 years prior, we were CIF champions as a team.
Okay.
Our girls did win CIF championship this year. So yeah, the program is pretty solid.
Yeah.
But yeah, we definitely beat Temecula.
So you guys are in the pool of because I know. Do you guys have A team, B team? Because Servite, we'd go against Servite. They'd have we have varsity A, varsity B.
We have so many kids that we have a B, a C. So we don't take any of our kids to JV tournaments. How we run it is that everybody wrestles varsity. Now we're gonna take our A guys obviously to the harder tournaments. They're gonna be wrestling in leagues, CIF, Masters, all of those things.
Sure.
Yeah.
Like battle for the belt.
Battle for the belt, all of those things. So then it's like these younger kids, we take them to the little bit easier, but they're still varsity tournaments. You're still wrestling varsity kids just to get the experience, because you're the kid that's gonna step into this kid's spot when he's gone.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how we keep it rolling. Trying to keep the program solid.
So what are the wrestle-offs like? Are they just chaotic? Like how long does it take for wrestle-offs to like? Is that like 2 hours?
It's not that
of time?
bad because we know who
is fit for.
We know who the kids are that should be there, and then we do allow like kids that you can only get your letter if you have a 95% practice attendance.
Wow.
You have to have 10 varsity wins. Like there's criteria to get it. So if there's this kid and he's showing up to practice every day and maybe he's not going to beat this kid, but let's give him the wrestle off, like let him start figuring it out. Like we'll do that. But for the most part, we know who those kids are that are the A guys.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's honestly, I like that criteria because that really wins out people who like take it serious.
Yeah.
And people are just like,
Well, and that's kind of interesting too, because I feel like we live today in a society that almost prioritizes feelings.
No, we don't.
And so and
wrestling.
Yeah, and we've done sports. Like soccer, and was my thing. I played soccer all my life, and so there was no mercy with.
I did
dad.
soccer in 8th grade, and I said, "Oh my God, this is too much running. I'm not doing it anymore."
The conditioning was wild, man. But there was no mercy with my dad. It was, if there was somebody that was being a little bit rough on the opposite team, Pops would pull me aside, hand me a small, and be like, "You take that kid out." Like, oh my God, I had some serious responsibilities out there.
Yeah.
So when you kind of are coaching this newer generation, are you just allowing the practice and the regiment that you guys have created to weed them out? Or are you kind of keeping in mind like, this is a little bit different of a generation?
It is a different generation, obviously.
Like,
the kids are a little bit softer. They're not as not like what I'll be 37 this year. Not like what it was. Like, rub some fucking dirt on it and get back out there.
Right.
So we do have 8 coaches for our program.
Dang.
So there is, and I'm the only female, and we do have girl wrestlers. So for them, it's like they can come to me if like, oh, I started my period, I need a new singlet, or there's different dynamics for each coach that helps with maybe the softer kid or the kid that needs to be yelled at to do well, or and us as coaches, it's our responsibility to figure that out about each kid. And with 8 coaches, and my brother is the head coach for the entire thing. I think we have it pretty mapped out. So
yeah.
Now, do you have to kind of like check yourself and go like, okay, I'm not the hybrid right now, I'm the coach. Like, do you, like, before you step into, the school or step onto that campus, are you kind of mentally preparing yourself? Like, no, I'm going into teacher mode. I'm going into developer mode. I'm not.
No, I feel like even when I fight or like I train, even when I'm sparring, like if I'm sparring somebody and I see them doing something, I'll still be like, hey, don't do that. Like, do it this way, or try it this way. So I feel like that is always a part of how I am. That's just my personality. Like, I want you to be good too. So coaching wise, like, it's second nature for me.
Gotcha.
That's awesome.
And then I have a question about, has there ever been a moment in time, like maybe after a tough loss, or you just been working so hard that you just like kind of broke down a little bit mentally, but then you eventually built yourself back up? Has there ever been low point?
As athletes, we all have that.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to say that I haven't had it, but now as a professional and how much older I am, more mature, and like been in this industry for so long, it doesn't happen as often. But yeah, of course, there's always like, oh, fuck, why do I do this? Like, my leg's all fucked up. I can't walk for a week, like, there's times or you put doubt in your own head where it's like, I don't need to do this. And then for me, it's like, even if I feel that way, I have stuff to fall back on. I'm a full-time electrician is my day job. Like, I have like, I don't have to do this for money. I do it because I like to do it. So for me, it's always like, okay, if I just don't want to do it anymore, I'm still going to be fine.
Exactly.
So.
And how would you say you built yourself back up after those, like, after those tough losses?
Honestly, it helps with the circle that you surround yourself with.
Okay.
Like, my boyfriend is also a professional fighter, so it's like,
you guys pick each other up.
yeah, it's like when you are sitting on the bed and you're like, he wants to go to the gym, but you don't really want to. He's like, well, I'm going. And then you're then you feel guilty. Like, so then you just get up and go. So that's kind of how our relationship is. And it's like, if he can only give 10% that day, then I pull the 90. And if he
awesome.
can't, or if I can't, he does, you know? So it's kind of like, and it's a balancing thing.
True power couple right there.
Yeah.
Really. Now, I mean, we've had a great opportunity to really kind of just break down a little bit about the fight game, you know, some of the mentality, behind it. But, you know, before we, kind of wrap it up, because we've been at this for an hour. I'm not even sure if you realize how
No, it goes fast.
It does go by fast. One of the things I kind of was curious about was being like having that fighter mentality, being a fighter in like the civilian world. Because you said you yourself, you are also an electrician. Like when you're driving, is there just people that are just like, man, if we were in the ring right now, I'd slap the shit out you. Like, is that constantly going in your mind sometimes?
I mean, sometimes like crazy drivers, people that cut you off.
Yeah, you're like, man, if we got
people
out
that
right
just
now,
brush by you in the grocery store. But for me, it's like, one, it's not worth. I'm a super nice person. Like most people, like
very
I look fit, obviously, and I look intimidating, but for the most part, I'm pretty nice.
I was gonna say, most people who have like literally the most experience and the most like the ability to whoop your ass, are like normally like the nicest people. You know, like I've met so many fighters and like people who do jiu-jitsu and everything. They're really good people.
Yeah.
You know, but when they are stepped across, you know, it's kind of like what is it, like ancient Rome? You know, you step in the octagon and it's just like the switch.
Yeah.
It's like warrior mentality.
Yeah, 100%.
And then you get out of it and you're like, you know, just you're happy.
Yeah, it's
good,
like,
right?
hey,
Yeah,
good
we
night,
have,
brother.
I'm normal. I have a boyfriend. I have 4 kids. I have a regular day job. But when I do compete, like, then it's time to do my job.
And it just shows too, because even though you slapped the shit out of her and knocked her out, you went out of your way to like hit her up, like, hey, like, are you good? Because you know, people don't see that either. They just see like kind of like the hype to it. They see being physical, but that shows a lot about you and your character, and it also shows a lot about her and her character.
Right.
You know, like you're stepping up there. Shit happens. If anyone can get knocked out. 100%. If they hit you on the button, no one's invincible to getting knocked out. Yeah. So it's like, you know, you have to go in there thinking that if you're like, there's no way, then you're probably going to be let down pretty hard at some point in time. You know, exactly.
100%.
Yeah.
Well, like I said, we've definitely covered a lot of ground here, got a lot of stuff, answered that we were definitely curious about. I know a lot of our fans are at home, people watching as well.
Yeah.
One of the things that we like to do before we wrap things up, every episode we like to end it with an ism, which is basically just a word of wisdom, something that maybe Pops could have said to you when you were out there, you know, and you were, exhausted and you heard his voice and he said something that just made you just turn the gas back on, or something when you were in a low point that someone spoke to you, some words of encouragement or some words of wisdom. It could even be just a quote that you heard or read on a bumper sticker or something like that. Anything that you want to say, or a word of wisdom or a quote that has impacted you that you may want to share with somebody.
A word of wisdom. For me, I think my dad always told me when I got on the wrestling mat, go out there and wrestle them like they took your lunch money.
Wrestle them like they took your lunch money.
Yeah. So like, just have that, like, as soon as you step on there, this kid just stole your lunch money. Now what are you going to do? Like that mentality.
I want my $20 back.
Yeah, pretty much. So, I really honestly live by that. I step out there and it's like, you're trying to take food out of my kid's mouth. And in reality, we're both standing in there. We're both making money. Who wants to make the win money? So it's like, that's my thought process. You took my lunch money and I gotta get it back.
It's on the line now. It's on. Well, with that being said, I know you had a fight that's coming up. And any one of the cameras, go ahead and give your plugs. Any sort of socials that you want to drop, you can go ahead and go into that camera right there.
So my Instagram is Jackie the Hybrid Cataline. I post most of like my competitions and everything on there. So go give me a follow. My next fight is 2 weeks away, April 4th.
Dang, okay.
It's going to be for Invicta. They usually stream on their YouTube page. But if you follow me on Instagram, I will post all of those things, the times, the dates, all of the things that I'm going to be doing. I have a fight April 4th. I have one tentatively for May 10th in Long Beach. So if you guys are available,
definitely,
it's local,
right?
And then hopefully I will be competing my next Power Slap event, International Fight Week, June 27th in Las Vegas.
Wow, you have a plethora of things keeping you busy this year so far, and we
on
are
top of 4 kids and a job and everything else.
I don't know how you do it.
She's hybrid. It's the hybrid.
It's the hybrid
right there. So we'll definitely make sure that we keep everyone posted who wants to know everything that's happening with Jackie, all of her events, all of her fights. We're going to make sure that we get all of her socials linked into the description. Check those out. With that being said, I'm going to have Ethan sign us off.
All right, guys. Thank you so much for watching Season 3, Episode 1 with the Jackie, the hybrid Cataline. Thank you so much for being on.
Course.
You know, maybe we'll get you on in 6 months from now just to get an update.
Yes, 100%.
But, yeah, thank you. Guys, all of her socials, like Phil said, in the description. Any, if you want to see her page, and then Reels as well. We're going to be tagging her. Check out our page and her page for that. But anyways, have a good day. Stay blessed. We'll see you guys in the next episode.
Peace.
Bye.